Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday night, 9:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and it's July 22nd, 2015, and that means it's time for the Mock and Roll Show. I am Sean, joined by my two mediocre co-hosts, and one of them is actually not in town tonight, which is kind of cool. But we have a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about some running back rankings. We're going to stir the sauce with those guys. We're going to talk about some rookies in the Mock and Roll at the end of the night, and yeah, we're going to have a good time. So, without further ado, let me kick it over first to one of my partners in crime here, who is not in town tonight. And you know what? For the rest of the night, I'm going to think of you as this, Johnny. You have something in common with the starting quarterback of the St. Louis Rams, which is when you walk around the streets while you're out there on business, nobody will recognize you.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Can you name the starting quarterback of the Rams?
I would definitely challenge for that position. There's no doubt there. Yeah, I'm actually in the Lou for business. Yeah, it's nice here. Never been here before. My boss thinks I'm here to work. I'm actually here to scout. So.
Are you out there to work on your 40 time? Did you rent out the dome?
Yes, my 40-minute time is what I'm working on.
40-minute time. Question: can you tell me the starting quarterback of the St. Louis Rams or the LA Rams?
Yeah, Nick Foles. We think maybe.
Yeah. The artist formerly known as Nick Foles.
Yeah. Could be Austin Davis by next week. Who knows?
Listen, I like Austin Davis. That's another story for another time.
All right.
Let me kick it over to Damien, a.k.a. Mr. Clean.
All right. Hey, welcome, guys. Hey, Mr. Clean, I like that. I need to get the hoop earring here and make it complete, and then bring out a line of cleaning products too. Sean, by the way, Sean, tonight I'll refer to you as Mr. 5K.
Thank you. I want to mention
grinding over there all the time, man. You're working up a sweat.
I am not sweating at all. It's this terrible, horrible light. It's awful.
Yeah, hey, he's the hardest working man in podcasting.
Give me a second. I gotta go towel off. All right. Hey, listen. Let's get into really quick. Just a little tidbit here. This is not really exciting fantasy news, and it's not even super relevant. But I would say 3 years ago, this guy was.
That's a good setup there.
It is a good setup. Listen, all I have are good setups. But 3 years ago, this guy took the league by storm and took fantasy football by storm in his rookie campaign. He dazzled his opponents, and then he just sort of became a shell of himself. Already. So here's what I wanted to share with you guys. There was an undisclosed offensive coach who today or yesterday told ESPN's Mike Sando that, quote, there's no coming back, he's done, and the reason is the injuries have slowed his legs and his ego will not allow him to hit rock bottom and actually grind his way back up to the top the right way. So my question for you guys is, have we seen the end of Robert Griffin III as not just a viable or even semi-viable fantasy player, but actually as a viable NFL quarterback?
Go ahead, Johnny. Yeah.
You go first, and then I'll follow.
Okay. I think not yet. I think that RG3. That's a really, first of all, that's a bomb that guy dropped on RG3. If that's not bulletin board material for that guy, I don't know what is. I think it's too early to say. I think this year we'll decide. I think if it was this time in 2016 and we're talking about this, yeah, he's done. But I think he's got another year to maybe prove himself. Am I optimistic that he comes back? No, not really. But do I think he's done? No. What do you think, Johnny?
John, before you throw your piece, John, I just want to add the final quote here because you might have something to say about this too. I just saw this. Okay. It also says this particular coach said. Actually, this was said by a personnel director to Sando as well. It says, to get better in this league, you have to have a degree of humility. And when he looks in the mirror, he's seeing things that everybody else is not seeing. That's why I'm surprised they gave him the fifth-year option and said it was, quote, an easy decision. when they were considering whether or not to give it to him. So go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Well, I think the reason is because last year when he got hurt, Kirk Cousins got really a great opportunity to do great things, and he just didn't. I don't know that he's the guy who they thought they were, where it would have been easier for them to say, after the fourth year, sorry, Robert Griffin III, you're not, we don't need you. We're going to go with Kirk Cousins. That's just not going to happen. I think the best option on that team is Robert Griffin III still. And I think that Kirk Cousins just isn't who we thought he was.
Go ahead. Say it again, Denny Green. Hey, listen, here's the other thing. John, you remember, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time, and I always try and sort of, have that crazy, wild, Madden GM mind. But they had talked about this a couple of years ago. Boy, you want to talk about a team that blew an opportunity to cash in, high. You remember I was saying 2 years ago, after his rookie year or whatever it was, he had the his breakout games that the Redskins should have traded Kirk Cousins. They could have gotten a first-round pick for him.
They would have got a lot for him. But in this league, listen, if there's any thought of you possibly moving someone and their stock is the highest, listen, people's stocks in this league don't stay high for very long, especially at the quarterback position, unless you're that elite quarterback. And they should have traded him as quickly as they could have, and got something for him. Yeah.
How many quarterbacks, Damian? How many quarterbacks would you have to go through before you use a guy off waivers like Robert Griffin III?
Boy, I don't know. You'd have to be in bad shape to play Robert Griffin III.
Well, that's why I'm asking you.
How many quarterbacks?
Bad shape.
I'd probably have him down at about 20th. So I'd say there's probably going to be at least 4 or 5 guys on waivers who you'd use before RG3.
You can use Brian Hoyer?
I would not use Brian Hoyer. You just pick one below him. Yeah, not Brian Hoyer.
Matt Barkley.
You know what? How about Charles Barkley? I'll use Charles Barkley before
All right, we settle on Charles Barkley, and we move on to the next topic.
It's just terrible,
Yeah. All right, guys. Now let's do a little bit of something we've been doing the last couple of weeks. It always makes for an intriguing conversation. Johnny, I'm going to start with you here. Let's do a little bit of would shock you and wouldn't shock you. And we're going to start like this. Johnny, did you know that the Jacksonville Jaguars haven't had a 1,000-yard wide receiver since 2005? Well, this wide receiver that I'm going to bring to you has a chance to break that trend in his second pro campaign. He's earned rave reviews during the off-season workouts, and he's the surefire #1 receiver at this point, which isn't really saying a whole lot. But, John, my question is, would it shock you or wouldn't it shock you if Allen Robinson finishes with 1,000 yards for the Jacksonville Jaguars?
It wouldn't shock me. I don't know that it's going to happen, but if it did happen, again, I wouldn't be blown away with it. Listen, Blake Bortles' second year, they got a big weapon in Julius Thomas. We'll see how that pans out and see if he's more than just a figment of Peyton Manning's existence. I think he could. They do have some young guys there. They had, I think, who was it? It was Marquise Lee, I believe, is there. He's in his second year. Obviously, listen, it wouldn't shock me. I don't think that it'll happen. I think if there's a shot for someone to get 1,000 yards, I think Marquise Lee's probably your guy. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I had to jump in here. I'm gonna put a pin on my board right here. Allen Robinson. It will shock me if he doesn't get 1,000 yards receiving this year. Allen Robinson out of Penn State, big receiver. Long target, knows how to fight for the ball up in the air. They're talking about he's not a speed demon, but they're talking about him in the same type of territory as guys like Dez Bryant, who can go up and just snag the ball. Yeah, it's Blake Bortles' second year. He's going to be better than he was his first year. Not a lot to throw to in that offense. You mentioned Marquise Lee, Johnny, and Marquise Lee is still there, but he didn't really show much in his first year. I think Allen Robinson gets 1,000 yards. And Allen Robinson, for me, is one more reason why you do not need to reach for a second wide receiver you can get Allen Robinson. I think he's lasting until the 8th round in most standard drafts. So Allen Robinson's a great pick.
Yeah, you know, it was only a couple of years ago that they had a really good wide receiver. Can't remember what that guy's name was, but it's a shame he ended up getting himself kicked out of the league. They'd have some choice weapons there. You know what I mean? It makes you wonder if they would have needed to add a guy like Julius Thomas at this point. You know what I mean? But it looks like they needed a weapon. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go with the fact that I don't think it would shock me. I'm with you, Damien. I think it would shock me if he didn't. Julius Thomas coming in there being the big name, he is going to put a big target on his back. You know what I mean? He's going to have a lot to prove this year. Getting that contract and good for him to cash in on his success under Peyton Manning. But Blake Bortles isn't Peyton Manning. I do like Blake Bortles. It's going to be interesting to see how the defense decides they want to cover that offensive game plan.
By the way, Sean, real quick, Julius Thomas would be near the top of my list for overdrafted players of 2015. I think Julius was drafted way too early just based on his name recognition.
I couldn't agree more, and you know what? And I can't wait for that to happen. Hey, you know what? Let's talk a little bit more about tight ends. Let's talk about a guy who was the darling of fantasy football teams for several years at the tight end position, and then recently, crashed and burned with a quarterback who doesn't know how to get past his first target. And this one stings me a little bit. But I guess my question is for you. We'll start with John. John, it would or it wouldn't shock you if Vernon Davis finishes as a top 10 fantasy tight end under new tight ends coach Tony Sparano?
No, it wouldn't surprise me. Listen, that situation is less about the tight end, more about the quarterback situation.
Agreed.
I think Vernon Davis didn't lose anything. Again, if he can stay healthy, which again has been a little bit of an issue for him, if he can stay on the field, and hopefully Colin Kaepernick can start to read a defense or learn a way to work around that and do what he did the first year he was there, his first full year. Listen, Vernon Davis 2 years ago was an absolute monster. Yeah. Last year was a bad year. I think it was a bad year for the 49ers in general. But I don't think he was right all year last year. I think this year he's going to come back healthy, and I think you're going to see the old Vernon Davis. Again, he's still a young guy. He's not I think he's around 30 maybe, but that's for a tight end. That's not extremely old. It wouldn't surprise me. I think he's still got the talent to do that.
What do you got, Mr. Clean?
I don't think it wouldn't shock me. I'm right with Johnny. It wouldn't shock me at all. He's not somebody that I'm going to be super, super excited to get on my team, but I think he'll be a value pick this year. I think it's about a 50-50 chance. Is he going to, just flame out like he did last year, or maybe he comes back? Neither one would shock me with Vernon Davis this year.
Fair enough. Yeah, as a 49ers fan, I got to tell you, I don't think it would surprise me. They have some older weapons there. Vernon Davis, like John said, he's a young guy. He's still incredibly talented. I don't think that, just like you said, I don't think Vernon Davis is at all the reason for his demise, recent demise. I think it has everything to do with Colin Kaepernick. The same issues the guy had coming out of college are the same problems he has now, and I don't know why, why they don't really acknowledge that as much. You know what I mean? But we'll see what the offseason does for Kaepernick. Hopefully it helped him out. Hopefully the regime change maybe helped him out. We don't really know a lot about his relationship with Harbaugh. They haven't really talked much about it. So hopefully the offense as a whole starts picking it up, because it's been painful. But all right. And hey, really quick, to our listeners, we have our first sponsor, and hopefully you guys can help us out with this. Keep the lights on a little bit. But listen, everybody's getting into daily fantasy sports. Well, fantasy sports fans are winning huge cash prizes every day at DraftKings.com, America's favorite place to play daily fantasy sports. Daily fantasy means no season-long commitments. You play whenever you want. Just pick your sport and draft your team. It's like a new season every single time you play. So you're never stuck with the same players. Over $1 billion will be won at DraftKings.com this year, and you could be the next one to win big. So do us a favor, do yourselves a favor, head over to DraftKings.com right now, enter the promo code MOCKROLL, MOCKROLL, and play for free. You get into a free contest. It's as simple as that. That's MOCKROLL as your promo code over at DraftKings.com. So head on over, play some daily fantasy sports, and win some cash, and you can thank us later. And I think, Damien, later on you're going to give your address if they want to send you a cut. Is that correct?
I absolutely will do that, and I encourage a 50-50 share of all winnings.
Awesome. All right, hey, listen, let's do what we like to do the most on this show. Let's stir the sauce a little bit. Damien, you want to talk to us about this week's sauce conversation?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a really interesting one this week. There are going to be a lot of owners in a really, really, I won't say a tough spot, but a challenging spot in the middle rounds 4, maybe 5, depending on 10 versus 12 team league. You have to pick which running back are you going to put onto your squad, hopefully as an RB2. If you're one of those proponents of 0 RB, maybe one of these guys is going to be your RB1. That's a conversation for a different day. I think you're a little bit crazy if you put yourself in that situation. But these guys are going to be your RB2s. We're going to talk about 4 of them today. All of them have some upside and some warts, I think, and hopefully we'll come to some conclusion about who among these guys, if they're staring you in the face in round 4 or 5, do you pick? Okay? The 4 guys in question, I'm going to give you the names first, and then I'm going to give you a quick rundown of a few offensive changes for each of these teams, just to give you guys and our listeners a little bit more of a clear picture of what's happened in the offseason. We have one Lamar Miller of the Miami Dolphins. We have Carlos Hyde of the San Francisco 49ers, Sean's team, of course. We have Latavius Murray of the Oakland Raiders, and we have Frank Gore, the 32-year-old running back for the Indianapolis Colts. So a quick rundown of some changes here. Lamar Miller's Dolphins, the offensive line is essentially the same this year as it was last year, which is to say it's still not very good, but nothing has really changed. What has changed big time on that team are their offensive weapons. They have added some wide receivers. They've gotten rid of Mike Wallace, who had no chemistry at all with Ryan Tannehill. They brought in Kenny Stills. They brought in Jordan Cameron. They drafted Devontae Parker, so they had a lot of guys to throw to on that offense now. They also drafted in the 5th round a big bruising running back out of Boise State named Jay Ajayi. So that's a little bit of an addition, a change there for the Miami Dolphins. Moving on, Carlos Hyde, the San Francisco 49ers. Sean, I know this pains your heart. Essentially, all of the news for Carlos Hyde has been bad, with the exception of one thing. Frank Gore moved on, so Carlos Hyde is now the presumed starter. Everything else has kind of been downhill. They lost Michael Crabtree, but they added Torrey Holt. To me, that's a wash, if not a gain. So the wide receiving core is, it doesn't look too much different. However, the offensive line, they lost Mike Iupati to free agency. He moved over to the Arizona Cardinals. If you know Mike Iupati, you know he's a tremendous run blocker. He's not there anymore. Also, Anthony Davis retired, their right tackle, so he's not there anymore. He was a pretty good run blocker.
I still don't get that.
Yeah, and also they lost a ton of other people to retirement and other things. On the defensive side, Patrick Willis is gone, as you know. Chris Borland, their second-year player, 24-year-old guy, he retired.
He was the heir apparent to Willis's job.
Yeah, Justin Smith, the Cowboy, he retired, so they lost a lot. Moving on, Latavius Murray, the Oakland Raiders, they added Michael Crabtree, which is subtraction by addition, if you ask me. They also drafted Amari Cooper, so basically they have Amari Cooper to throw to, and they didn't do anything else to their offensive line. Just like the Dolphins, it's the same guys, which is to say it's still pretty bad, but it's an offensive line. And then everything else is essentially the same for the Oakland Raiders. And then the last guy we're talking about, Frank Gore. Frank Gore moved from the 49ers to the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts also don't have a good offensive line. None of these teams actually really have a good offensive line, just putting that out there. But they have Gore, of course, has Andrew Luck. He has a ton of weapons. He has T.Y. Hilton. He's got Andre Johnson. He's got Philip Dorsett, who they drafted. The list goes on. Kobe Fleener, Dwayne Allen, Dante Moncrief, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a rundown of the guys. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about the SAUCE formula. The SAUCE formula stands for situation, ability, upside, and safety. We're going to do it letter by letter. So we're going to start with situation. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to talk about all four at once. We're not going to throw numbers out. We're not going to number geek it out, although I'm the numbers geek among the three of us. I'll throw some numbers at the end at everybody. But for now, we're just going to talk about who has the best situation among these four guys, who has the second best, who has the third best, and who has the worst. And when I throw it out, when I talk about situation, when we talk about situation, we're talking about the offense's ability to move the ball. We're talking about offensive line. And we're talking about, and don't forget this one, gentlemen, is the person the clear-cut starter? And even if he is there somebody else on the roster who potentially could steal his job? That situation, what do we think? Let's start with Johnny. Johnny, who has the best situation among these four guys?
I think it's obvious out of these guys. It's Frank Gore. He's on the best offensive team. He's a proven veteran in the league. He really has, for him being over 30, he hasn't really lost a step. He's pretty much the same guy he's been for the last couple of years. The only difference is last year's was the Niners were kind of not force feeding, but they were definitely cutting his time to get Carlos Hyde carries. I think that's obviously Frank Gore's the main guy there. I think if anyone else comes there to take carries, I think whatever the case may be, it would be a 70-30 split. I think Gore's getting the majority of the carries there, and Frank Gore definitely is by far in the best situation.
I'm not going to dispute that one bit. I mean, I think anytime you're talking about a team who has one of the top two fantasy quarterbacks, this season, and not just fantasy quarterbacks, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL under center. I mean, none of the teams that we're talking about here have anything even close as a signal caller. Andrew Luck is the deal maker here. You know what I mean? Their offense is good. I feel like that they're going to get from Frank Gore what they wished they would have gotten from Trent Richardson. When you're talking about situation, you're talking about, just like John said, the guy. Here's the thing. Every year we talk about this guy a little bit, and everybody is down on him a little bit every year over the last several years about you can't rely on the guy. He's getting older. Blah 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 blah. And here's the thing. Here's what people don't realize. Frank Gore has played 4 straight full seasons. 4 straight full seasons. Now, I know that becomes part of a conversation later on with safety, but that matters with the situation here. You're talking about a guy who doesn't miss games and who's going to help his situation because he's a phenomenal run blocker. So keeping Luck off of his back is going to help him in the running game. So, I mean, compared to the other guys, there's no question. I think Frank Gore is in the best situation. He's going to have the best opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, that's an easy one, boys. That's the low-hanging fruit here. Clearly, Gore is in the best situation of these guys. He's going to be down at the goal line for bunny 1- and 2-yard touchdowns all season. He's in the best situation. That part of the conversation is not too interesting because I think anybody can figure that out. Here's where it gets interesting. Here's where it gets real interesting. Who has the second? You know what? Yeah, let's go. Who has the second best situation among those guys? Johnny, who's after Gore?
I think it's Lamar Miller. That's a team who, if you're looking at these 4 guys, that's a team that did really the most in the offseason with bringing in new weapons. Like you said, Kenny Stills, Jarvis Landry, even you didn't really mention it before, but Greg Jennings. Greg Jennings is a league veteran. He's going to help groom this young core group of wide receivers plus Jordan Cameron. And Ryan Tannehill's, and again, you look at it, he's really the best the next best quarterback on this list when you're looking at it. So yeah. I think Lamar Miller, again, last year coming into the season, he wasn't even the starter. Knowshon Moreno was. And when Moreno went down, Lamar Miller did what a talented backup should do. He took the reins, and he looked like a starter. He looked like he should be a starter there. So, yeah, I think Lamar Miller is the second best situation there.
Couldn't agree more. When you're talking about Lamar Miller, here's the best thing to happen to Lamar Miller, and it's not even so much the additions to that team. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, they are big factors in his success this season, and they will contribute greatly. But Johnny, you touched on it a little bit here, and I'm just going to sort of bust the door open on this one. The best thing to happen to Lamar Miller this year and to set him up for success is this. This is the first time in his career, in his short career, that he is the clear-cut number one on the depth chart coming into camp and going through these OTAs and camp. There's no more Reggie. There's no more Noshawn. There's no more Daniel Thomas. You know what I mean? You're talking about a guy, on 3rd and 1. And I don't know if you guys know this. Lamar Miller, for the playing time that he did have, when you're talking about when you're talking about running backs, carries, on 3rd and 1, Lamar Miller actually statistically was the best 3rd and 1 running back in the league. 83% of the time he converted. So just because he's a smaller guy, doesn't mean he's going to lose any of those carries on those passing downs. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I'm with the two of you guys. I think Lamar Miller, for me, is the second best situation of any of these guys. Johnny, everything you said, and Sean, everything you said, I agree with. The second best quarterback, really, really potentially a good offense. Here's my only fear with him, and he definitely is the second best. The only little ding on his situation, I think, is that running back they drafted in the 5th round, Jay Ajayi, a big guy, a big bruising guy. Lamar Miller is not a big dude, okay? And I know what you said, Sean. Sometimes smaller backs can get it done. He's not real small. He's not like he's not like Amir Abdullah. He's like 212 pounds. But you know what? They haven't trusted him in the past to be the bell cow. Even last year when he had almost 1,100 yards, they only gave him more than 16 carries 2 times the entire season. Right. So they don't view him as a bell cow. If Ajayi comes in and Ajayi shows he can get it done, I don't think it's going to happen week 1 or 2 or week 3, even week 4. But I think eventually, if Ajayi shows a lot, it could be a 50-50 timeshare. That would be my only ding on him.
Well, let me tell you this. I know that Lamar Miller has put on some weight and gotten himself a little bit bigger to prepare to
that
be
makes me nervous. That makes me nervous. I don't like that.
But not a lot. Just a little bit, they said. And here's the stat I want to give you. Normally, when you have a big guy, whether he's a young guy or he's a veteran, and you have a young guy come in, what do you think he's going to do? You think he's going to snipe touchdowns? You know what I mean? Inside the red zone. You know what I mean? I mean that's the fear with everybody who's got a big bruiser. Okay, Lamar Miller. If you're out there and you're thinking about taking Lamar Miller, here's why you don't worry about the rookie they drafted, especially inside the red zone. Here's why. Because inside the 5 last year, Lamar Miller was 6 of 14 when it came to the ground and pound inside the red zone, getting into the end zone. You're talking about a guy, and here's the thing. Yes, he hasn't had a ton of carries, but here's what he has had. Okay, see, I did some homework for this week, Damian. You should be impressed.
I am impressed. I'm very impressed. This is the first. By the way, if any of your teachers are listening, they're all going to say, "You did homework."
I know. You're absolutely right. So here's the thing. When you talk about Lamar Miller, yeah, you're right. He hasn't had a lot of carries, and he hasn't been consistent with the number of carries. But again, here's a great stat for Lamar Miller, drafters. He was the top running back in the NFL when it came to percentage of carries, of total carries, over 5 yards. 43.1% of his carries were over 5 yards last season. The league average, 32.9%. That's a big difference. That's an 11% difference you're talking of carries over 5 yards. I mean, there was no question about that. I mean, the Dolphins situation. Here's the other thing about the situation, real quick, with the Dolphins. It's kind of a bizarre contrast. They were in the bottom 10% of the league in rushing, but they were the second highest in yards per rush at 4.7.
I'm with you. And listen, I don't think Ajayi is going to become the starter there. And there's probably a greater than 50% chance that Lamar Miller gets 70% of the carries all year. All I'm saying is, in a historic 2015 running back class, you had Jay Ajayi as the almost universal number 3 guy on everybody's board. It was Gurley, then it was Gordon, then it was Ajayi. The only reason he fell down in the 5th round was because of long-term health concerns. I'm just saying the guy might steal some work. He might not.
You have to be concerned.
Yeah, Miller's still in the second best situation. We all agree there. What about the third best situation, Johnny?
Well, I think this is where the waters become a little murky. Now we're looking between Carlos Hyde and Latavius Murray. I think it's Hyde, but I don't think it's a head and shoulders above where Murray is. listen, Hyde's still on 49ers. It's his second year. Hopefully he can avoid that sophomore slump. But yeah, like you said, they added some guys. I don't know if it's a beneficial add or, with adding Torrey, Torrey
Smith.
Torrey Wilson. No, Torrey Smith.
It's a very common last name. I understand.
They still got Anquan Bolden. They still got Vernon Davis. If Colin Kaepernick can avoid what he did last year and be a more productive quarterback, that's going to open a lot of opportunity for Carlos Hyde. So yeah, I think Carlos Hyde, in situation-wise, has the third best.
I agree. Where you think it's maybe kind of close between those two, I think it's not even close. Because here's the thing. When we get to safety, I'm going to tell you why it's not even close between these two guys from a numbers standpoint. Okay, but when we're talking about situation, here's the thing. Here's what Murray has going for him. Okay, I would argue that the quarterbacks might be around the same level because Derek Carr seems to make better decisions more consistently. You know what I mean? Than Kaepernick, who can see one guy and that's it. But here's the story on Latavius Murray. In one shot, Del Rio says he's the number one guy. He has no competition. It's his job to lose. He's going to get 20-plus carries. That's the benefit to his situation. And that's it. You know what I mean? Yeah, they have Crabtree. Yes, they have Cooper. That offense is either going to be I think the Raiders are going to be the biggest boom or bust offense this year. They're either going to synergize and really take off with the talent that they have on paper at skill positions, you know what I mean? Or they're just not, and it's going to be, well, next year will be their year. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think it's close. I think Hyde has more experience around him to help him. I think from a skill position standpoint and things like that. And I think he has more. I think the 49ers have more talent at the skill position players when you're talking about receivers, tight ends, and things like that. So I agree that it's Hyde, but I honestly don't think it's close.
Yeah, I'm going to say for situation, I agree more with Johnny, but I agree with both of you. I think that Hyde is in number 3 in the situation. I think that the 49ers, actually of all 4 of these teams, believe it or not, I think the 49ers have the best offensive line, even with the loss of Ayupati and Anthony Davis. I still
think
a lot. Now that's saying a lot about how. I'm not saying that they have a good offensive line. I'm saying that the other 3 teams have really, really bad offensive lines more than anything. But I think their skill position players are better. I also think now this is crazy. I never thought I would go to Kaepernick, but I think that Kaepernick is a better quarterback than Derek Carr in his second year. Derek Carr didn't really show a whole lot in his first year. Kaepernick, I think he's a little better than that. But here's the issue, and Sean, here's where I disagree with you a little bit. I don't think Murray is a lock for 20 carries. They brought in Roy Halou. Roy Halou is not a bell cow back. Roy Halou is not going to steal a tremendous amount of work. But I'm more worried about Roy Halou stealing work than I am about 30-year-old Reggie Bush stealing work from Carlos Hyde. So that's sort of where I stand on that.
Go ahead. I'm not worried about Reggie Bush stealing carries at all. And here's the thing, right? The 49ers set up weapons, right? I mean, can you tell me who the Raiders' tight end is? And I'm not being facetious here. You know what I mean?
Michael Rivera.
Okay.
Is Asbury still there?
Well, but my point is, are you going to take Vernon Davis or those guys? Are you going to take Anquan Boldin and Torrey Smith, or are you going to take the receivers that the Raiders have? And to what you said, Damien, are you going to take Kaepernick or Carr? What I'm saying is the only thing Latavius Murray really has going for him, in my opinion, right now, is the fact that he's in a position to get 20 carries plus. You know what I mean? Until he screws it up. You know what I mean? It's not that I think Carlos Hyde, is on a short leash, but he has better weapons to take that burden off of his back and spread the defense out a little bit more for him to make it easier. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. So to recap, for situation, here's how we have them ranked, boys. We have Frank Gore, far and away the number 1. Lamar Miller, the clear number 2. Carlos Hyde, we agreed, was number 3. And we pretty much agreed on everything. We said Latavius Murray is number 4. Let's go to ability. And we're just talking about who's the guy who's the best runner here? Who's the guy who can get it done? Who's the guy? I don't need to preview this. Let's start with Sean. Sean, who has the best ability among these 4 guys?
Well, I think of these 4 guys, I think, and like I said, when we get to safety, I want to talk a little bit more about one of these guys in particular from a number standpoint. But when you're talking about just ability to run the ball, while I think that Carlos Hyde could be the breakout young running back star of this year, okay, I think Lamar Miller is the most talented running back ability-wise of the 4 of them. Frank Gore, yes, he can still play. Yes, he's still strong. Yes, he still plays every season. He's not, I mean, it would be ridiculous to think, unless we're talking about Adrian Peterson, that as he ages, with double knee surgeries on both knees before he even came out of college, at almost 31 years old, it's hard to say that Frank Gore is going to be the best runner. Now, I think he has the best vision of all of these backs. Frank Gore's vision is unbelievable. His pass blocking is fantastic, and he has decent hands. But I think from a running standpoint, Lamar Miller is explosive beyond explosive, and he's a guy. End of the year last year, he busted off a 97-yard run and made it look like it was the easiest thing in the world. You know what I mean? So I'm going to take Lamar Miller. I think is the most talented runner of the group. I'm going to take Gore's overall blocking and vision second, and then I'm going to take Hyde and then Murray.
What do you think, Johnny?
Okay. I don't want to confuse upside and ability, which I'm going to say Frank Gore, still has the best ability out of the group. He is the best running back out of the group, whether he's 31 or not. If you're looking on paper, again, he has the larger body of work. And if you're asking me right now who is the best running back, and again, taking what Sean said, everything's encompassing that. You're looking at ball carrier vision, you're looking at pass blocking, you're looking at the total package of a running back, and I think Frank Gore still is that full package. So I'm saying ability is still Frank Gore. Again, don't want to confuse upside, because I think there's some guys who have better upside than him.
Yeah,
I think ability, I think is still Frank Gore.
I think my water's been spiked. I mean, I agree with you. He really is the most talented back of all of them, and
the most complete back.
What have we talked about? What have I talked to you about before about fantasy backs? Proven commodity over gamble. You're right. I was mistaking ability with upside. Frank Gore is the guy, but then I'm going to move Miller down to 2, and then I'm going to go Hyde and Murray.
Here's what I think, and I will. This is such a tough one, right? Because when you talk about ability, you can't separate that vision, and you can't separate the body of work. Sean and I had this conversation on the phone earlier today. For me, if I was starting a team right now and I could pick one of these backs, I would pick Carlos Hyde, just because he has an incredible ability to break tackles, the quickness. He sort of does. He's a little bit like Marshawn Lynch, because he's a quick enough and fast enough guy. He can get to the edge and he can break tackles. But you have to go with Frank Gore. Frank Gore just has that. He still has the vision. He's not going to burn you with speed anymore, but he's proven it. He knows his craft. I'm going to go with Frank Gore in terms of ability for number 1. Number 2 for ability, and I think you guys kind of said it, or Sean, you did anyway. Who do you have at number 2 for ability?
I have Miller.
Okay, Sean has Miller for number 2 for the reasons he mentioned. What do you think, Johnny?
I have Hyde as ability-wise. Listen, coming out of college, again, he's a second-year guy. He had a pretty good rookie campaign as the split back there. Kind of what you said in the last segment, Damien, is Niners have, I think, by far the best offensive line. I don't think Reggie Bush is going to take away his carry, so to say. I think ability, just the quickness, being able to break tackles, learning behind Frank Gore last year. I think Carlos Hyde's ability is 2, but again, like I said before, with the other guys, he's not head and shoulders above Lamar Miller. Listen, I love Lamar Miller. He's my keeper in our league. But I think he just edges out Miller for that number 2 spot.
I want to mention one thing, Damien, real quick.
Yeah.
One of them is a cheap plug. The other one is something, for listeners here. Now, I think we can all agree on this, and Damien, you kind of touched on this based on our phone conversation before. Here's the thing. Here's the thing for our listeners out there. Listen, if you guys are in this position and you're coming up to these 4 backs and you're in a keeper league and you can keep, a 4th rounder or a 5th rounder depending on how your league is set up, and you're faced with these 4 guys, to me, there is no question. You talked about starting a franchise. If you're in a keeper league and you can snag one of these 4 guys, you've got to take Carlos Hyde. You have to take him. I mean, there's no question. Like you said, you're talking about building a franchise. I think you take Carlos Hyde all day.
Yeah, and we'll get to that conversation. I mean, to jump ahead just a second, I like Lamar Miller more in redraft this league than I like Carlos Hyde. There's no doubt about that. But I think Carlos Hyde has more ability than Lamar Miller. I'm going to disagree with you, Sean. Now, I'm not saying Lamar Miller is a slouch, but to me, Lamar Miller is a straight line runner. He's not going to break a ton of tackles. He's 212 pounds.
Hyde is going to break him, and he has.
Carlos Hyde, man. The Pro Football Focus puts out some statistics about broken tackles. Carlos Hyde.
I got one for you too.
Yeah, Carlos Hyde's broken tackle percentage was 2nd in the entire NFL. Now, it was a smaller sample size.
Behind who?
Behind Marshawn Lynch.
Right.
There it is. By the way, and Carlos Hyde's number of broken tackles behind the line of scrimmage was number 1 in the league. The dude busts tackles and he's quick. For me, if I'm starting a franchise, for ability, I almost put Carlos Hyde here at number 1, but you can't put him ahead of Gore. So we agree. So that means that's going to put Lamar Miller at 3 for ability, and that'll put Latavius Murray at 4. I want to make one mention of Latavius Murray. And this is just my piece. I don't know what you guys have to say about him. I do not like Latavius Murray. He's 6'3". He's a big dude, and he's really fast. I think he had like 4.4 speed. The dude does not break any tackles. He goes down on first contact every time. I am not on Latavius Murray. He's not going to lose his job to Trent Richardson, but I just don't like him as a running back. I don't know if you guys have a take on him for ability.
I do have another remark about Carlos Hyde since we're talking about ability, and then I never got the cheap plug, and here's the cheap plug. By the way, to our listeners, I didn't say this early enough in the show, but I am going to say it now. If you like the show, if you love the show, help support the show, please go to iTunes, subscribe to our podcast. After every show, we cut this up, we throw it up there, and you can download it and listen to it at work or wherever you'd like to if you want some mediocre fantasy advice. No, just kidding. But
with that being said, even if you don't like it, just download and don't bother listening to it.
Yeah, listen, you can pretend. I mean, you can fake it all day, And then, of course, follow us on Twitter at Mock and Roll Show. If you want, during every show, you can tweet in your fantasy questions, your fantasy opinions. Tweet at Mock and Roll Show or use the hashtag Mock, the letter N, Roll. Mock and Roll. Here's the thing I wanted to say about Hyde, and here's the one thing he's going to have to work on. It's kind of funny that he's in an offense with a guy like Kaepernick who can't get through his reads, with his receivers. Well, the one big thing that scouts and analysts noticed about Carlos Hyde last year was he needs to where Frank Gore, the 49ers had a guy who had incredible vision. And making decisions once he took the ball. Carlos Hyde seems to have this knack for tunnel visioning before the ball is even snapped. He's made his decision where he's going before he's even gotten the ball in his hands. He needs to get better at active decision making. Now, he's a young guy. It's only his 2nd season, so he's got time to work on that. But that's the one big thing he really has to work on. He also has to not dance in the backfield. The guy. He was 5th in yards in the league after first contact at 2.8 yards. But here's the contrast to everything we've talked about with him and his breaking tackles. Okay, no one was hit more, or excuse me, there was only one other player hit more behind the line of scrimmage than him. You know what I mean? So actually, no, he was the worst. He was the worst at hits behind the line of scrimmage. He was just able to turn most of them into something. So,
Sean, let me just piggyback off that real quick. When talking about Carlos Hyde, what's the hardest thing for a team and a coach to teach a young running back, or really any running back, is instinct. It's either you have great instinct or you don't. I don't think he has a terrible amount of instinct when it comes to running. I think he's going mostly off of ability. Right. I think that's why you're seeing him getting hit in the backfield, because he's not able to make that split-second decision on, where the trouble is, where, he doesn't have that. You hear, them talk about quarterbacks having that internal clock. I don't think he has that kind of that instinct where he knows to avoid danger, to get through, or avoid contact, where he's going to be taking a lot of contact behind the line. His ability is making him be able to break those tackles and make those into positive gains. But as he gets older, if he doesn't learn that, or he doesn't pick that up, he may not be a very long career for Carlos Hyde.
I don't disagree with that at all. And by the way, just to throw this out there, there's only two other stats that I felt were important that I wanted to mention about Carlos Hyde. Talk about ability and things like that. One of them is that you want to talk about, and I know this ties into safety, but just to get the rest of the stats out here that I had looked up for these guys. With Carlos Hyde, okay, the dude falls forward. Always. You're always getting something out of him. He was only stopped for 2 or less yards 32 times out of 83 carries. That's crazy good. That's 7th best in the league for a guy who was a rookie last year and didn't see a ton of carries. But and so that's only 38.6% of the time. And then the other thing is, in our league, and Damien, I know you have Carlos Hyde. Our league, a lot of points are scored on big plays. We have big play bonus in our league. And there are leagues that do that. Well, I have bad news for you, Damien, if you didn't look this up. Okay? Well, Carlos Hyde did perform well in a lot of areas. The dude had 1 carry over 15 yards. So he's a guy who's going to be a brute. He's going to be, what is it, Johnny? 5 yards and a big cloud of dust. He's going to get you. He's going to get you yards, but he's not. He's not a guy who's going to break them off.
Yeah.
So anyway, we can move on. But
death by paper cuts.
Yeah, there it is. So for ability, we had somewhat of a consensus, a little bit of disagreement, but mostly we all agreed that Gore had ability.
I'm a pushover.
Yeah,
I'm with you on Hyde. You guys are right.
Oh, there it is. Okay, total agreement. Then we have Hyde at 2, Miller at 3, Murray at 4. For upside, we're talking about who can climb up and be that RB1 for you, if any of these guys can. And I'll cut to the chase here. I'll start with myself, and then I'll toss it over to Johnny here. I think that Gore has the best upside of any of these guys. I don't think. Let me back up a step before we make our listeners feel like Frank Gore is going to be the next coming of Eddie Lacy. He's not going to be. Okay, he's not going to put up that kind of numbers. He's not going to get that many carries. He's still 32. Okay, they're not going to give him the guy 300 carries, but he is going to be at the goal line with the ball in his belly a lot in that offense, and that makes his upside for touchdowns. I mean, would either of you guys be surprised if he got 15 touchdowns this year?
Yes, I would be surprised.
I would be extremely surprised. I think he gets 9 on the ground, maybe 10. But here's a change I think you're going to see with him. I think that he also could sneak in 3 to 4 quick screens in the red zone from Luck. I mean, don't forget, we talk about all these other abilities. Frank Gore knows how to catch the ball. It's not his fault he had Colin Kaepernick under center. From 2006 to 2010, Frank Gore averaged 43 receptions per year. With like Alex Smith and whatnot. Okay. Then you talk about contrast. You switch to a guy like Kaepernick who doesn't know where to throw the ball. So from 2006 to 2010, he averaged 43 receptions a year. You want to talk about falling off the planet? From 2011 to 2014, 18 catches per season. That number's going up with Luck.
Yeah. So upside, I say Gore. Johnny, who do you have as number 1 for upside?
For upside, when I'm looking at upside, I'm thinking, who hasn't peaked yet, whose ceiling is the highest, and I think it's Carlos Hyde. I think he has the highest ceiling. Where I think with Frank Gore, I think you know what you're getting. Again, without kind of blurring the lines with safety and ability, I think upside. I think it's Carlos Hyde. I think he has the most to gain. I think he has a lot of rooms to improve. But I think if he improves on those areas, I think he becomes the better of these 4. I think his ceiling's the highest.
Okay. While I think that Carlos Hyde is second on this list in ability. You know, he's a big dude. When we talk about ceiling, we talk about upside. That means, you know, to me, that means we're talking about ability to put up big numbers. You know what I mean? Now, where I think Carlos Hyde has the line to do it, or the better line of this group of backs we're talking about, I am now going to come back and say that you have a guy like Lamar Miller, and my thing is, you know, I'm not in love with Lamar Miller, but I think when we're talking about this group, if that line and those offensive additions can open up that defense just a little bit for him and give him a seam to run through, I mean, I think you're talking about a guy who could have 4 carries this year over 50 yards. You know what I mean? He's that fast. He's that shifty. He's that quick. He's got the talent and the ability to do it. He just needs the team to help him out. He's still very young. You know, he overcame an injury and came back and showed that he can still play. You know what I mean? Again, we're talking about a guy who's right up there. You know, who he's the top running back for carries over 5 yards. To me, I think you got to look at Lamar Miller as having a good chance to have a big ceiling this year.
Yeah.
You know what, Sean? I'm gonna change my vote here. You've convinced me here. I'm gonna move from Frank Gore. Frank Gore, when you talk about upside, yeah, Johnny, you're right. You know what you get out of Frank Gore. He could get. I think he'd get it. I think I wouldn't be shocked if he got 12 touchdowns, but he is not gonna rush for 1,300 yards. He just won't. That will not happen for Frank Gore this year. Lamar Miller could do that, and Lamar Miller, because that offense could be so good. It's such a big question mark how good that offense is going to be. If Lamar Miller gets 70% of those carries and averages 5 yards a carry again,
I'm telling you, he will get 70%. I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
You know what? It could. I think I'm changing my vote to Lamar Miller.
Yeah, and listen, just real quick. I know I said this before, but listeners, if you're wondering why Lamar Miller with the upside, again, top clear-cut #1 running back in carries over 5 yards this year. Just under 50% on opportunity to score touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. And this is where it comes back to the additions, Damien. This is where we're talking about that situation having improved. Last year, they were in the bottom 10% in rushing percentage. But now they've added weapons to help that situation. And even last year being that bad, they had the second highest yards per rush. I mean, what else do you need?
I think you need a Lamar Miller jersey, but I agree with you, dude. I think
he screwed me when I had him on my fantasy team that year. John, remember that? He was my RB2.
Yeah. You convinced me, Sean. I'm going to bounce it right back to you. I'm sticking with Gore as my #2 for upside. Sean, who's your #2 for upside?
Frank Gore. In improvement, he upgraded his offensive situation. He has arguably the best or second best quarterback in the NFL. A consistent, the coaching staff has been great. So all of those things lead to him having a good upside. The ability to run the ball effectively, the ability to score and move the ball downfield. You know, I think situation and upside in Frank Gore's case go hand in hand. And then you take into consideration everything John said. When you talk about his veteran ability, his ability to make plays, see the hole, hit the hole, knock guys over, not miss games. You know what I mean? And he's going to get more catches. I think absolutely he has great upside this year. I'm all in on Frank Gore at #2.
Johnny?
#2, I got Lamar Miller there. Again, I think he's a close #2 to Carlos Hyde for all the reasons that Sean stated. Lamar Miller, his upside is, listen, look what he did last year. He got, he didn't come in the season as a starter. He becomes a starter, averages 5.1 yards per carry. Whether that's a good offensive line or bad offensive line, Lamar Miller's making it work, and I don't think we've seen the best Lamar Miller yet. I think good things are going to happen with him.
What do you got for safety?
What's that?
What do you got for safety?
So
I think we're still going through ability now.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did. I thought we didn't hit 3.
No, yeah, that was my #2.
I apologize. My fault.
So let me recap. For upside, we said that Lamar Miller has the highest upside, and this is the first one we actually officially disagreed a little bit. We have Gore at 2, We have Hyde at 3, and we have Murray at 4. Now we move on to safety, and safety.
Well, hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
For upside, I actually have Frank Gore at for ability. I'm sorry, upside. I have Frank Gore as 4 for me. I actually have Latavius Murray higher than Gore.
Oh,
The reason that is, and I'll explain my thinking here, because I'm just taking this category and I'm putting it in a silo. So I am just looking at the upside, what this guy can bring. You know, I think, like I said before, I think we've seen the best Frank Gore. And I don't know if you guys can really disagree with that. Maybe you can. But I think we've seen the best Frank Gore. With him being in a new offense, granted that offense is a good offense, you don't know how he's going to produce. His body of work is telling us, yes, he's going to do good, but what we don't know until, because listen, when Indianapolis Colts drafted Trent Richardson, not saying they're in the same league, but we said, oh my God, what a steal! Trent Richardson in this offense is going to be amazing, and he fell flat on his face. Not saying that this is going to happen, but I'm saying by upside alone, I think Latavius Murray, his ability and him being a young guy, a fast guy, with that offense getting better, again, not at the level as obviously the Indianapolis Colts, but they are making strides to get better. Derek Carr is a very underrated quarterback. He's a great decision maker, better than Colin Kaepernick. With that sense, just so you can kind of get a gauge on him. I think the offensive weapons around him will give Latavius Murray an opportunity to really, because again, he didn't have a full body of work last year. He only had 82 carries. A lot of that was because of injury, and he was splitting work behind 2 other guys. But he did average 5.2 yards when he did run. So I think his upside, I think it's higher. I think obviously as that team gets better, which I believe that it will, I think that he's going to be a passable back.
I just wanted to say one quick thing, and then Damien, you can take this and run. One thing I want to say, Donnie, I love you. I respect everything you're saying, and you make good points, and you're a smart dude. But read it on the nameplate right there. Frank Gore is not Trent Richardson, man.
No, I understand that.
No, I know you know that, but what I'm saying is this: I don't think the conversation has anything to do with Trent Richardson. I mean, I'm not going to dispute a lot of what you're saying at all. But I don't think Trent Richardson even belongs in the conversation. They're not even close. I do agree that he fell on his face. Frank Gore's not going to fall on his face.
I was just using him as a reference point, as that's not jet lag. I was just using that as a kind of a talking point on how a running back can go into a great situation and not succeed. Even though, again, maybe that wasn't the best example, but there has been good examples of good running backs leaving their current team, going to a better team, and not producing the way that they did, whether it being offensive scheme, offensive line, communication between the teams. A lot of things can happen. Again, I'm just going strictly off upside and where I think that Frank Gore's ceiling is set. I don't think he's going to, like I said, I don't think you're going to see a better Frank Gore. I think you can see Latavius Murray with a higher upside.
I like your moxie, sir, that you know what, and I think you have a good working definition of upside too. So that actually changes our rankings. If we look at them now for upside, that moves guys. So now we still have Lamar Miller at 1. Carlos Hyde is now ranked number 2 for upside. We have Gore at 3. We have Murray at 4. And that takes us to safety. Who do we think is going to be the safest player? When we talk about safety, boys, we talk about 2 things and 2 things only. We talk about number 1, injury risk, which that's kind of hard to predict, but with running backs, you can do it a little bit more. We're talking about age and number of carries. And then we also talk about, is the dude going to keep his job? So for safety, who is the safest running back among these 4? This is an interesting conversation. Sean, take it.
This is just, for me, this is the easiest question you could have asked. Who on this list, now granted they haven't all played this long, but who on this list has played every single game? Whether you're talking high school or college, or college or the pros, every single game over the last 4 years, Frank Gore. Who's in the best? Who is the most stable coaching situation? Frank Gore. Who has arguably the best quarterback in the NFL under center? Frank Gore. To me, there's no. Oh, and who has no? Which of these backs do you have no fear of anybody really stealing the ball from him? Frank Gore. Frank Gore is the safest back, and I don't even think it's a close second, and I don't care who that second player is. To me, it's not even close.
Yeah, I agree. It's Frank Gore all day. He is the safest. Listen, with everything being said with upside and whatnot, again, this is its own category. Safety. That team is it's a great team, great coach, great quarterback. Frank Gore should do well in his offense. Again, I don't think he's going to be a world beater. I think he's going probably right where he should go. That fourth round-ish, fifth round. I think if you can get a Frank Gore in that spot, I think you're doing all right.
Guys, I'm going to be the dissenting voice here. First of all, let me say that I don't think any of these guys are super safe, to be honest. That's why they're all fourth and fifth round running backs. That's why you can't pass. I don't want to get on the soapbox here. You can't pass on the top running back in the first round. You just can't do it this year. I don't think any of these guys are super safe. I don't think Frank Gore is the safest among these guys for one reason and one reason only. He's 32. I know he's played the last 4 seasons, Sean. I know he's not going to lose carries. The dude is 32 years old. To me, the safest guy here, and I still don't think he's super safe.
Wait, he's 32. Hold on, he's 32, and you know what he did, or you know what he's never done in his career at 30 or 31 or 24 or 27. What has he never done? And I'm not talking about missing games. He's never averaged below 4.0 yards a carry.
Yeah, I hear all that. I just, for me, and this is just me personally, at his age, I can't rank him as the safest guy among these other guys. I'm going to put Lamar Miller for me, is the safest guy among these 4. I'm still a little nervous about Ajayi, but I think he's the safest. He's had multiple years in that offense. For me, he's number 1, but Gore is our collective number 1 safest. Who do you have at number 2, Johnny?
I have Lamar Miller. Again, not a lot of competition there behind him. Even if I think, and actually, with that being said, I think if Ajayi even gets some work this year, which he will, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for Lamar Miller, because he had some, I believe it was either lower back or knee issues previously. To get that younger guy to kind of get some work, give him a breather. I don't think it's going to be enough where it's going to really affect his weekly outcomes. I think he's still going to average right around 12 to 15 carries a game. But yeah, I think for safeness alone, I think Lamar Miller is a number 2.
I have nothing to add here. I agree. Miller number 2. I mean, I still think he's gonna get 70% of the carries. I think he has big upside. I agree. Miller number 2.
And I would have Gore number 2 there. So what about number 3, Sean?
Number 3, as far as safety goes, I'm going to take Carlos Hyde. They wouldn't have traded up and drafted the guy in the second round if they didn't plan to have him be the heir apparent to Frank Gore. Kendall Hunter was a guy that they loved, and as a 49ers fan, I loved. But I mean, he tore his leg up. You know what I mean? Last year, missed the whole season. That was a big part of the reason that they took Carlos Hyde. So for me, it's Carlos Hyde because it's his job to excel with, and it's his job to lose. Reggie Bush wasn't brought in to be a threat. He was brought in to just help spread the offense and be another weapon. I see Reggie Bush being more of a threat at the punt returner position than I do the running back position.
It's funny, Sean. You actually had that same we had the same conversation last year, but instead of Reggie Bush and Carlos Hyde, it was LaShawn McCoy and Darren Sproles. But I'm going to agree with you. I think Carlos Hyde is the number 3. Latavius Murray, the problem with him is you just don't have that body of work. You don't. Again, last year he was inconsistent at best. His stats were really skewed because of one 4-carry game that he got 112 yards in. So his season was skewed. So he's at this point not a safe guy to go with. Like I said, I think he's more of an upside guy, more of kind of a flyer to see what happens. But yeah, I think Carlos Hyde is the number 3 there. He's the guy. unlike the Eagles were last year, I don't think Reggie Bush is going to cut in his carries or his touches like Darren Sproles did with LaShawn McCoy. I think Reggie Bush, being how old he is and really how ineffective he's really been, especially last year, I think he's going to be more of a decoy slot guy. I think you'll see him line up more at wide receiver than you will at running back. I think Carlos Hyde will get 70% to more, 80% of the carries there. So he's pretty safe.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about safety, I think that my fear for Hyde is not that Reggie Bush is going to take his job. That's not going to happen. 30-year-old Reggie Bush, first of all, he's never been a feature back. He is not a feature back now. Kendall Hunter is a very good running back, but he's like a Reggie Bush, about the same size as Reggie Bush. He's not a feature back. Hyde's not going to lose his job. The fear is that the 49ers get behind and Hyde doesn't see the field on passing downs, and you have Reggie Bush lined up back there and Hyde losing carries. I have Hyde as third as well. Latavius Murray, I told you guys before, I wouldn't be surprised if it ended up being a 50-50 split with Halou, just because Halou has actually been surprisingly effective. He's not a big guy, but I don't know. I don't believe in Murray. I've said that. Guys, let's put a little bit of a capper on this. Sean, you want to add something?
Yeah, all I want to add is I kind of feel bad especially for Raiders fans out there that might be listening. I feel like, it feels like the only reason we have Latavius Murray even in this conversation is because we feel like we needed somebody that wasn't as talented as the other three guys to have as the last place guy on this list.
There are people who love Latavius Murray. There's people maybe listening now who say, you guys are crazy. Latavius Murray is the best of these four guys. And you know what? You can make I wouldn't agree with it, but you can make that case. Here's how we have them ranked, boys. So here's what I want to do. I want to tell you how we have them ranked according to the sauce formula, and then I want to ask each of you guys, would you actually draft them in this order if you were staring at these four guys? Because even if the sauce formula says one thing, sometimes you draft them for upside, or sometimes your gut just tells you something. Fantasy football is like poker, man. You get the hand, and the hand is dealt to you based on luck in a lot of cases. So anyway, we have the sauce formula says that Frank Gore is the best among these four running backs. If you're staring at these guys, you have a chance to grab Gore, you take him. The sauce formula says that Lamar Miller is the second best among these guys. You would take him after Gore if Gore was off the board. We say that Hyde is the third best, and we put Murray. We give Murray actually fours in all four of these categories. So we have Murray as the clear-cut fourth place back among these guys. Johnny, would you draft him in that order?
Yeah, like when you're looking at for example, in our league we have keepers, and I believe this year Lamar Miller and Carlos Hyde are going to be off the board for everyone because I'm keeping Miller. I believe you're keeping Hyde, so that's going to leave Latavius Murray and Frank Gore. For value, I think I would draft Murray because I think Frank Gore's going to go way early. I think he's going to go earlier than he probably should. I think if you're looking at the 5th round and you see Latavius Murray there, I think you take him, or even the 6th round. If he's available and you're set at running back, because I think I will be, I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on a guy that has, I believe, really good upside. Like I said, I have him more upside than Frank Gore. Again, that's my personal preference. I like a guy with a little more upside. So I would actually go Murray there. Obviously, if Frank Gore's there in the 5th round, I'm taking Gore. But I think for a value pick, I think the better value is Murray in the later rounds, which I think you'll get him.
What do you think, Sean?
I'm with everything you said. I think Gore's going to go earlier than he should. Because everybody's going to look at this relationship now with Luck and that offense. Here's the thing for me, I would draft him in the order that we talked about, right? But if I was ready to take Gore, and I'm like, damn, like Gore just went, I'm gonna have to take Miller. For me, I have no problem taking either one of those guys. Actually, I think by the end of this year, between the two you clowns over there, Johnny, I think I'm going to be high-fiving you for having the better keeper with Lamar Miller over Carlos Hyde.
Is that a self-high five?
It is a self-high
five, sir.
All right. Well, Damien, anything you want to add there?
I draft him in the order that we talked about. With Miller having the upside, to me it's about roster construction. If I'm really happy with my first running back, and I feel like, wow, I have somebody who's totally solid, I might go for the upside play and take Lamar Miller there. But yeah, you got to draft him in the order we talked about, I think.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, it's time to wrap things up. Ran a little bit behind schedule here, but that's all right. I hope hopefully our listeners got some.
We always do.
Yeah. Hopefully our listeners got some useful information out of this show, or we helped you kill some time. But we are so degrading. Anyway. All right. Well, it's time for this week's mock and roll. We're gonna throw out some players, and actually, Johnny, I know you and I love to debate everything in the world, whether it be football or pro wrestling or gaming or whatever. This week, I'm out. This week it's you and Damien. This week, originally we had 3 names in the mix here. I'm going to cut it down to 2 names, actually, because I think that's the more important discussion to have. Let's talk rookie backs. Everybody loves rookies. Everybody wonders which rookie is going to be the breakout in fantasy football, and if you should be the one that grabs him for your keeper league. So, since you are never involved in these, really, Damien, I'm going to send it to you, bud. Let's talk about Todd Gurley versus Melvin Gordon. I'm going to give you your 1 minute, since 30 seconds always seems to be an issue for us, especially me. So, Damien,
no, it's an issue for you.
Okay. All right, Damien, you want 30 seconds? You're going to take the 30-second challenge?
30-second challenge. Let me pull up my timer here so I know.
I've got you. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take it away.
For me, this one's not even a hard conversation. It's Melvin Gordon all day. Todd Gurley opens up the season. If he's not on the PUP list, there's no way he's going to be available after his ACL tear last November for the first couple weeks. And then he's going to have to catch up to speed in the offense. It's clearly Melvin Gordon. I would draft. I know we cut this guy out. I would draft T.J. Yeldon before I would draft Todd Gurley this year. To me, it's Melvin Gordon. You don't even look back.
Johnny, take it.
Okay. I'm going Todd Gurley. I think he's the more athletic. I think he's the higher upside guy. Yes, he tore his ACL, but you know what? Frank Gore did. Wilson McGahee did before him, and they still had successful NFL careers. The biggest knock on Melvin Gordon, he played in the Big Ten. It was a horrible division, and he's not a pass catcher. I like Gurley better. He's a faster guy, and I think he has more upside.
Didn't Melvin Gordon, wasn't he a Badger?
He was a Badger. You know who else was a Badger? Ron Dane. He was a Badger.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Do we need to talk about all of the super exciting, super bust running backs?
It's a terrible division. It's a skewed division. Running backs never come out of there, good. Again, it's a when you're looking at Georgia, a running back in Georgia, who's all world there until he got hurt, and you're looking at a guy who's in Wisconsin. Come on, I don't buy it.
I hear that. If Gurley was healthy, I'd take Gurley in an instant. I don't think Gurley sees the field until week 3 at the earliest, and then they ease him in because they have Trey Mason. Who's going to take carries over Melvin Gordon? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to throw something out here.
I'm sorry. I agree, Damien. I would take I'd actually take T.J. Yeldon over both guys.
Would you really? Wow, yes. Really?
Listen, he's an Alabama guy. He's consistent, and they compare him to Eddie Lacy. And he's a big guy. Listen, he's not the fastest guy, but he's a bruiser. He's 6'1", 226, and he's coming out of the best college team, the best college or the best pro-ready system, I think, in college football.
Hey, you guys heard it here first.
There you go. Well, listen, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight to another edition of the Mock and Roll Show. We're here every Wednesday night live on YouTube, and you can subscribe to our channel Wednesday nights, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Go to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast. Usually by early tomorrow or tomorrow night, you should see this edition of the show up for download. So if you're a subscriber, it'll come automatically into your iTunes, your iPod, or your iPad, and then you can listen to it wherever you want. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, though. Damien and John, it's great to have you guys on the show, obviously, and have these conversations. And again, help support the show. head over to DraftKings, get your free play. Free play. Just go to DraftKings.com, sign up today, use the promo code MOCKROLL, MOCKROLL, and get a free entry, win some big cash, and then tell us all about it and rub it in our face. If you boys don't have anything to add, the last thing I do want to say is follow us on Twitter at Mock and Roll Show. Very soon we're going to be active on Instagram at Mock and Roll Show, and we appreciate the support, we appreciate the love, and we're going to keep bringing you these shows. Send us your questions, send us your thoughts. We'll talk about it live on the air. And if you guys don't have anything else, I just want to say we'll see you guys next week right here on the Mock and Roll Show every Wednesday night.